Hello again, and thanks for tuning in. So, yesterday in the news, there was a lot about British judges making rulings on immigration. The topic of chicken nuggets came up, strangely enough, and there was a lot of discourse, especially at Prime Minister's questions, relating to a decision about Ukrainian refugee policy that's being used to take in other immigrants from places like Gaza. And there was a judge ruling about it, and this is causing a bit of consternation. Now, there was yesterday a post on X from Dominic Cummings, where he laid out a few of the issues surrounding this. And just to give you a summary of what his post was, he asked the question, why are these insane cases now happening daily? Seems like every day there's some sort of Supreme Court ruling of one thing or another. There's also the remark there that the Attorney General and Starmer, who appear to be this bureaucratic, legalistic, lawyer type hierarchy. And of course, you've got the Attorney General who prosecutes special forces. You've got the Chagos legal stuff going on. It just seems as if the legal profession and lawfare seems to have taken over and pushed up to 100 miles an hour. Essentially, what this court ruling did was, and again, this is mentioned in the post, this opens the floodgates on immigration and essentially ices the government out of those decisions, and all manner of people could come here as a result of those decisions. It's also remarked on there that Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservatives, supports Keir Starmer in the ECHR, the European Court for Human Rights. And he also makes the case that this will continue for many years, and that, in his belief, only regime change can save us. So, regime change, what does that mean? And bearing in mind that's from a government insider. This is a government insider here, or an ex-government insider who has been at the heart of government. He's seen how these machinations play out. He's seen how the system actually works. And he's described in detail, not that I'm any great fan of Dominic Cummings, but he has described in detail previously the fact that when you're in ministerial meetings, the ministers are just reading things from a piece of paper. It's not a normal meeting in how we would consider a normal meeting. A lot of this stuff is scripted, even on internal meetings. And a lot of the bureaucracy is so entrenched in the system as to make ministers almost powerless. So there's a few ways that we can look at the British power system, the system of power, before you can even really start talking about concepts of the deep state, because this conspiratorial term is used by conspiracy theorists. And it needs to be borne in mind that a lot of these conspiracies tend to come true. But we'll put that aside for 1 second. So what is the Supreme Court? What's their role here? So the Supreme Court was created in 2009. It's not an old thing. It's not something that's been there for hundreds of years, as people may believe. The Supreme Court was created relatively recently. Previous to that, a lot of this high judicial stuff was handled in the House of Lords. And essentially it was created as the final court of appeal in the UK for all civil and criminal cases. So that covers the full spectrum of everything. Now, I'm not a legal professional, and these are, just to make that clear, that I'm, a layman in terms of this, but to my mind, civil and criminal cases, that's going to cover virtually everything. So ultimately, what we're talking about here is a court that can make final rules on virtually anything that happens in the UK. Now, this was created by the Labour Party. So what we're looking at here is, and this was created in 2009, so what we're looking at here is one branch of government, which is the Supreme Court, which was created to rule over all civil and criminal cases. Aside from that, you've got other things like the Office for Budget Responsibility, which was created by the Tories in 2010. And that essentially outsources much of the decision making relating to the economy. Now, one of the things that you may remember, the Liz Truss debacle, she brought out a budget without really finally getting the sign off for the OBR. And the OBR and the Bank of England don't like being pushed out of things. Now, whether you agree with the Liz Truss debacle, whether you believe she crashed the economy or not, it's clear that the Office for Budget Responsibility has taken some power from Westminster. Takes the power away from our politicians. In addition to that, it was Gordon Brown in the late 1990s who outsourced interest rates, or the setting of interest rates, to the Bank of England. So what have you got here? You've got the Supreme Court taking decisions on all things civil and criminal. You've got the OBR is effectively in charge of the economy, or in charge of certainly a primary role in setting policy. And you've got the Bank of England, which sets interest rates as it feels. And the one thing to bear in mind is, in all of those three branches of government, which is what they are, there is no accountability. So as a citizen of this country, I don't get a say in who sits on the Supreme Court, who's in the OBR, or how and who sits on the Bank of England, how those decisions are made. They're appointments. Who makes the appointments? I have no idea. Who are these people? I have no idea. They are faceless bureaucrats, technocrats, might be a better way to put it, but regardless of what they are faceless and untouchable. So the Supreme Court, which, just sticking on that, was the one that ruled here. So that court can rule in any way it wants. So let's say, as with the Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer exchanges and Prime Minister's questions, where he was asked the question, he kind of batted that question aside. But Starmer knows full well, he's a lawyer, he knows full well that the government can challenge these decisions, but he's going to play in between the lines because Starmer actually believes in the supremacy of the court. He believes in lawfare. He believes in a legal way to run things. He doesn't understand, to my mind, leadership. He doesn't understand populism. He doesn't understand anything of that nature. What he understands is legality. And although he hid behind that yesterday in Prime Minister's questions, I think most people know that he agrees with these decisions. So, how do we change this? Do we want to change it? Well, if you're going to change it, if regime change, as Mr. Cummings seems to suggest, is the way forward, then are the Labour or Tories going to do it? I doubt that. Certainly, Kemi Badenoch seems to support the ECHR along with Starmer. There's not a lot of talk in the Conservative Party at the moment about coming out of the ECHR, perhaps people like Robert Jenrick and others. But it seems as if the Uni Party has settled on this is how it's going to be. And so what we can expect going forward are faceless judges of whom are non-accountable whatsoever, making decisions that have far-reaching consequences for the people of this country, like accepting refugees from parts of the world where a large percentage of those people may believe in the tenets of a terrorist organisation, namely Hamas, in this instance. But we don't see the hundreds of decisions that happen there. And if we go back to the Supreme Court playing its role in the Brexit debacle, I have a memory of watching the Supreme Court make this decision and that decisions during the Brexit issues that went on, along with John Bercow in the House, along with all of the MPs trying their very best to pretend that they were listening to the people. These are the functions of the deep state, and this is not a conspiracy theory. The deep state exists. So what we can do, we can vote in all the MPs will want. We can vote in this person and that person, and the MPs can say, oh, he said that, oh, he said this, and she said this at a rally, and he said that, and then we all went like that, and this is all icing. Because buried beneath are the systems of power that have been introduced over the last 30 years. And the deep state of the UK is not dissimilar to the idea of hidden groups of individuals, often within each government bureaucracy, who exert significant influence over political and governmental decisions behind the scenes in virtually every country all over the earth. The UK is not different, doesn't have a worse problem, but perhaps it has a more embedded state of mind. Now, as I said, this is largely associated with conspiracy theories, but if you had the argument to say, well, this isn't happening, if this isn't happening here, I would have to say to you, well, what we're looking at here, Supreme Court, OBR, Bank of England, all of these decisions have been outsourced to people. The bureaucratic influence of the deep state is deep. There are, after all, powerful figures in the civil service. There's intelligence agencies. And there's civil servants that hold considerable sway over policy decisions that you never see. The MPs are just the froth on the top. Added to that, you've got intelligence agencies like MI5, MI6, GCHQ, all of these stuff. And the establishment in the broadest sense of the word is a network of these types of individuals. Does that include the monarchy? Business leaders who goes into number 10 and has meetings, as did often happen, famously with David Cameron and Rupert Murdoch. These things go on. And so what we're talking about here is faceless bureaucrats making huge decisions for the people of this country. And it surfaced yesterday, as it does sometimes, and it needs to be taken notice of. Yesterday, a British judge made a decision that goes against the principles, values, morality of most of the people in this country. That judge was not accountable, and this is going to continue on. And in that vein, I think that Mr. Cummings is correct in what he says, that this will continue for years, and that only a regime change can save us from this. And it's not coming from Labour or the Tories. It's just not going to happen. And essentially, we just have to put up with this and see where this goes. But I have a feeling that with all these judicial decisions that are happening at the moment, you get the feeling that Mr. Starmer is fully on board with all of this rubbish. And that's to the detriment of this country. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it.